Okay. Thank you for joining us today for a special curators talk for the exhibition John Mawurndjul I Am the Old and the New. My name is Georgia Cribb. I'm the gallery director at Bunjil Place. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands upon which we're virtually meeting. I am working from the Kulin Nations and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also acknowledging that First Nations people have been making art for tens of thousands of years and continue to make significant contributions to contemporary art. Bunjil Place is delighted to present a survey of works by one of Australia's leading contemporary artists, master bark painter John Mawurndjul, developed and co-presented by the Museum of Contemporary Art Australia and Art Gallery of South Australia in association with Marawonga Arts and Culture. This landmark touring exhibition includes work spanning 40 years of the artist's practice. The project has been assisted by the Australian Government's Visions of Australia program, and we're delighted today to be able to welcome two of the curatorial team to speak with us. Nici Cumpston is curator of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art at the Art Gallery of South Australia. She's also artistic director of Tanadi. Nici was recently awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia, or OAM, for service to the museums and gallery sector and to Indigenous art. And we have Dr. Lisa Slade, Assistant Director, Artistic Programs at the Art Gallery of South Australia. Her recent curatorial projects include Quilty, the National Touring Survey of work by Ben Quilty, and Kul Ata Taja, an exhibition of new work by the APY Lands, currently in Brittany, France. Thank you both and welcome.
Thanks, Georgia. Thank you for having us. It's lovely to be here. Lisa and I are here on the lands of the Kaurna people, the traditional owners for the Adelaide Plains. Agsa Kaurna Yatunga Yawandi. Agsa stands on Kaurna land.
We're so delighted to be with you today, and a big thanks and a shout out to the team who have made this possible. We're thrilled that the exhibition is about to open at Bunjil Place, and a special thank you to the team from the Museum of Contemporary Art. This has been a collaboration that we'll speak more about in our presentation, but we'd just like to kick off by acknowledging the incredible work that they've done over there in Gadigal land. So hello to everyone across the country.
So what we thought we might do is start off by showing a few images and telling a few stories about how this wonderful exhibition came to light. And, you know, the thing that is so important is that we were able to work alongside of Balang, John Mawurndjul AM, and his family and the community, all of the people who work at Marawonga Arts and Culture. And, you know, without them, this would never have been possible. So the enthusiasm, the dedication, and the spirit with which this has come together has just led the project from the get-go. So the curators involved in the project are from the Museum of Contemporary Art, Clotilde Bullen, Senior Curator of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Art, Natasha Bullock, who was then Senior Curator, myself, Dr. Lisa Slade, with Keith Munro as the lead cultural advisor. And Keith is also from the Museum of Contemporary Art. And we worked in very close collaboration with John Mawurndjul AM, his wife, Kay Lunjawonga, son, Ananias Zawulda, and the Marawonga Arts and Culture staff, including Michelle Colpert, Zebedee Bonson, Derek Carter, and the fantastic interpreter translator, Dr. Murray Gard.
And in that list of individuals, I think you get a pretty quick sense that it's absolutely a cross-cultural collaboration. And I think what's important to cite up front is that for us, and we work on Tanadi, which is an exhibition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art for whom the artist is always the centre of the storytelling. For us, this exhibition made such sense because this is an exhibition where the artist himself becomes a curatorial agent and absolutely a key part of the storytelling process. And that extends as a kind of ripple effect to his community, all the way through to some of the key interlocutors. And Nici just mentioned the incredible Murray Gard, who's a linguist who has worked with John Mawurndjul for over 25 years. So clearly it was going to take a whole country to make this exhibition happen. And if I can just get you to think a little bit about the shape of our country and the shape of Gadigal, if we think about Gadigal land, our colleagues working on the Gadigal land of the Eora Nation us here in Ghana country, and then we're thinking all the way up to Gurningal country. We're thinking and sending all of our energy up to Gurningal country. Now, as well as thinking and sending our energy up to Gurningal country, we visited Gurningal country. And this image here of John Mawurndjul, did you take this one, Nici?
Yes.
Yes, this is one of Nici's photographs. So this image reinforces how important country is, a place that has been so kind of informed and infused with knowledge and belief and custodian power. So here we've got Mawurndjul holding the manyuk, as Nici was saying. And for us to travel to Mimilgan together was the beginning of not only the curatorial process, but it also ignited the very beginning of the curatorial framework. It gave us a sense, working closely with Balang and listening to him, as to how the exhibition might be put together. It made so much sense to eschew or throw out, if you like, some of the traditional Western ideas of looking at time, so looking across time, or looking particularly at technique or even at subject matter, and instead to privilege country. So to position place at the heart of the storytelling and as the curatorial driver. What did we do then, Nici?
So thankfully, we were able to be with Balang and for him to be able to take us on this journey. And that first trip that we were on, we went to numerous different sites, or gunrad, so the sacred places where either the story came from, or there are also some really incredibly important places where the ochres are sourced from, which are used to create the bark paintings. So every aspect of the making process came from country. It came either in the form of the material, or it came from the stories that are deeply held within these gunrad, these sacred places.
And the idea of staging an exhibition in Adelaide and in Sydney and now all over the country through the touring program was really about honouring that, and to show that contemporary art can come from deep within country and can be informed by traditional knowledge. And one thing that always strikes me, it's a bit of a truism, but I think in the Western canon we place tradition and innovation as polar opposites. We talk about artists being either traditional or innovative. In the figure of Balang and arguably many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists, those two things are entwined. In fact, they're always acting upon each other. Tradition is always creating innovation, and innovation is always drawing up from tradition. So we wanted to position that right in the heart of a place like the MCA and, of course, the Art Gallery of South Australia, two places that I think really prize the contemporary, to start to think about how people's perceptions, our audience's perceptions of the idea of contemporary might be shifted. We're not very interested or engaged with a lot of public ideas around Aboriginal art being this or that. In fact, what we've noticed over the time that we've been working in this space is that there, of course, are no single rules, or there are no kind of key principles that Aboriginal artists, like all artists, are drawing from their experience and from deeply informing their work with their sense of selves, their sense of identity, and hence anything's up for grabs. So it was really a way of thinking about our audiences who have these ideas around what a bark painting might mean or what an Aboriginal artist might look like, and shifting those perceptions or misconceptions in some cases.
Yeah. So one of the other sites that we went to was Kujidmi, and this beautiful billabong is part of Balang's mother's country. And this is a site where the ornate burrowing frogs is a sacred site for them. So this is a really, as you can see, it's a beautiful location. You have these incredibly beautiful water lilies. There were lots of birds abound all around this gorgeous site. And, Balang, part of the filming for the website, so johnmawurndjul.com is the website for this travelling exhibition and is a terrific resource. And so some of the footage on the film that's associated with that website comes from this particular site.
And this is the whole team at Mimilgan that we mentioned previously. So the MCA team, the AGSA team, and most importantly, Balang and his family at his home. Now, I guess one of the things that in thinking about the idea of travelling across country to present the exhibition, from Gunungu country in the north down to Ghana country in the south, over to the east to Gadigal land, is really to think about how and why these convergences or these conversations are happening. When the MCA opened in 1989, one of the first acquisitions were two major works by John Mawurndjul, and similarly the Art Gallery of South Australia has two major works. So it was in that early reconfiguring, or those early kind of moments of forging a collection for the MCA, their entire collection, and for us, our Aboriginal collection, which was still nascent, that the exhibition germinated, so that we could work together with this artist that we thought was really important. I guess another point to make is that there have been too few monographic exhibitions on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists in this country. If you think about the canon of art history, it's largely forged around this idea of these singular figures. In fact, we've created a mythology of art being driven by single individuals or agents. We wanted to see how that mythology would fit a different kind of cultural context, I suppose. We wanted to do the writing of one, a monograph, or the kind of story of writing one with the figure of Balang and John Mawurndjul, because we felt that there had been too few histories, and more importantly, too few publications on the work of Aboriginal artists in this country. There's been important scholarship. Someone like Howard Morphy was doing work in his MA back in the 1970s on Narich and Maymuru, but they haven't made their way, I would argue, into the kind of dominant thinking, and certainly not into exhibition making.
Yeah.
Case in point, here we go. So it is in the late 80s and the early 90s that Mawurndjul starts to be embraced and recognised internationally, which was the other critical point for the exhibition. We wanted to really acknowledge that his was a name that's known around the world, and in fact there have been a number of international exhibitions. You could even argue that he was better known outside his own country. So we really wanted to shift that perception and to really celebrate this master bark painting here in Australia. And these two works are just extraordinary demonstrations of Mawurndjul's power. The rock made by the Munyilk brush that Nici spoke about is the kind of star of the show, I think, as well as, of course, these slightly terrifying creatures that you see depicted in these particular works. On the left-hand side, Nici, remind me of who they are. I have to look it up again. Is it Bullawana on the left?
Yes.
Yes.
And Bullawana is from the site of Ngandario.
That's right.
So the Gunrid of Ngandario, and is one of the sites that we were taken to. Before we could enter this site, we had one of the men who was with us called out. And he was the Jungai for this particular location, the caretaker for this Gunrid, for this site. And he called out to the ancestors to check and make sure that it was safe for him to bring non-Gunungu people onto this place and onto this site. So we waited, he called, we waited, and then it was okay. We were fine to move ahead and to come on to this beautiful country. So there's an incredible rocky outcrop at this site. There is a huge undercroft of rock art, and it's a place where Bullawana, so this painting on the left is depicting Bullawana is one of the ancestors who died during a drought at this location. Interestingly, as we walked across to the rocky outcrop, Balang, John Mawurndjul, stopped and touched a rock. So it was a standing stone that was a few feet high in the ground, and he was gently stroking the top of this incredibly beautiful rock. And he looked at me and he said, "Bullawana, my auntie." So the standing stones are representing the ancestors who died here. Also within this this site are also the bones of the deceased. So the painting on the right is depicting this, you know, the bones that are, sorry, the painting on the left, you can see that there are dismembered parts of the body, and that's depicting the bones and, you know, the remains of the ancestors that are also tucked into the rocky crevices at this particular site. Painting on the right is Ngalyod.
And we mentioned Ngalyod before as being the spirit that pierced the ground at Mimilgan. And I mentioned the rock, but there's also this incredible sense of dynamic energy that's emanating from the composition, the way that the rock is shifting all over the ground, and this really distinctive black ground. Stylistic diversity is something that I think this exhibition really introduces. If you had an idea about what a bark painting looked like, I think it'd be thrown out the window by the time you got into the exhibition itself. In the figure of one artist, John Mawurndjul, you see these shifting stylistic approaches to bark painting. Case in point.
These works are depicting the animals and spirit beings, and the second painting in is a thylacine. Interesting. We're in Western Arnhem Land, the very top of the country. So sorry, we're in Central Arnhem Land. The thylacine, I went to a site in Western Arnhem Land at Inuluk Hill and was shown the thylacine depicted in rock art at that site. And to think that here I was in 2019, I'm at a rock art site in Western Arnhem Land, and there's a thylacine. So how does this happen? Clearly, you know, that land bridge between, you know, the mainland of Australia and Tasmania. This, you know, this is a site where the thylacine once roamed. And so this painting is a treasure for the Jolmi Museum, which is the museum, which is a keeping place for the artists that live in and around Maningrida, and it's part of the Bawinanga Arts and Culture organisation. And so this painting, as I say, is a treasured painting. But it just goes to show the diversity of Balang's practice, and also that knowledge and that undertaking of portraying, you know, these incredibly important rock art figures and works that are transformed from the rock onto the bark painting now.
And you can see that transcription here with the ground of the bark painting being the rock surface, if you like, and the figure being placed upon that ground. This wall is just a good example of, this is from the Museum of Contemporary Art's installation, by the way, and the exhibition opened there, and it opened with John Mawurndjul speaking about his work, and also with Hetty Perkins, curator, speaking about John's work. Hetty wrote the lead essay in the publication. So this is a good example of the stylistic diversity that I referred to earlier. You can see another emanation of the Ngalyod, which is second from the right. So alongside paintings that are seemingly abstract. And I use that word seemingly because to Balang and to the community, they are far from abstract. These are works that call up, just as the work alongside it does, that call up these systems of understanding, belief, representation, and cultural knowledge. And here you can see shifts in the colour of the ochre, you can see shifts in the scale of the bark. One of the things that the audiences in Adelaide were really interested in is the shifts in presentation of barks. Barks have taken a long time to move out of the kind of ethnographic museum context into the art world, and with them they've changed the way in which they're displayed or represented. So the Ngalyod, you'll see, has two pieces of timber at the bottom and the top of the bark, and has kind of held the bark in place. More contemporary barks, or more recent barks, don't often have any of those kind of constraining methodologies, and often will have a bracing, a gentle bracing at the back. That's because in bark paintings, and keep in mind that bark paintings come almost exclusively from the top end of Australia, although there are early records of them being on Eora country back in the 1780s, but that bark paintings have a really singular morphology, that barks themselves are, of course, the bark of the Eucalyptus tetradonta or the bark of the stringy bark tree. And as such, they have a life and a vitality. Couple that with the mark making of John Mawurndjul, then you've got this phenomenal dynamic energy, this kind of brilliance that's happening to entrance and captivate the viewer. That's a good segue. Is that a good segue?
It was a great segue, leading into this beautiful photo essay, which really clearly shows us the process of collecting the bark. And you can see here that we have Balang, John Mawurndjul. He's used, it's like a whole other tree and lent that up against the tree that he's cutting the bark from. Shimmied up it. I don't know how you do that. That's quite incredible. And then using a sharp tomahawk axe, he's tapping out the shape of the bark and then gently prizes it from the tree, lowers it down and creates this fire. So the fire is used to dry the bark so that it helps to dry out the moisture so it can be flattened. So once that drying process has happened, it will have seared the the particles off the bark itself, and the inner bark is ready, is kept away from the fire, and then that bark is then heavy objects are placed on top of it, rocks or other things to flatten it and to dry it out over a period of time before it's then sanded down and rubbed back and prepared, ready to start painting on.
That process can take minimum of 12 months really, because the barks are harvested in the wet season when the bark can be prized and kind of pops off the tree itself. And then of course the flattening, the smoking, the flattening takes a great deal of time as well. That's before you start painting. So that's, just something for all the artists out there who are used to acquiring canvases and prepping them briefly to keep in mind. This is a process that is absolutely indebted to the rhythms of the climate and the rhythms of the environment and what that environment provides.
And this is an image going back to Ngandario, so the site of where Bulawana and the ancestors died during that drought, just to show you, the beautiful landscape of this particular country. So the country changes right through from when we first drove out of Maningrida. You have these, it was quite sandy road, and it's interesting because the colour of the road changes. The road is, this intense red colour, then it turns into this sandy, soft, soily, soft sand, and then changes again into more yellow and then into the rich, deep red. So the ochres that Balang uses are collected, as I said earlier, from particular places, and those places are sacred. They're important sites, and they are offerings from the ancestors. So the white clay, that dupan, that very sacred white clay that's used, is referred to as the feces of the ngaliot, of the rainbow serpent. And that comes in like a thin, fine line at the very bottom of a really thick, heavy, encrusted rock surface. So
in just some places.
Yeah. So you have to know exactly where to go to get that. And that really is a sacred colour. That white is something that you'll see painted throughout Balang's work, but is something that really gives it that brilliance. And that's something that is part of the technique that Balang uses when he's painting, is he'll get a painting to a certain point and then he'll go and pop it out in the scrub, and he'll walk away from it and he'll turn around and come back and look at it. And if it's got that kabimbembe, if it's got that brilliance, then it's ready to go. But if it doesn't, he needs to do more work on it. So it's this whole process of looking and feeling and getting that sense of whether he's captured the essence of what it is that he's painting.
And Gabimbembe translates as jumps out at you. So if it jumps out at you, then you're on the right track. And when Balang and Murray Gard spoke to us about that idea, it kind of struck us that that's what all artists are looking for in their studio. Sometimes we use the camera to help us find it, or you'll kind of do that thing where you look over your shoulder to see if the work is really working. And so the Gunungu or the Mawurndjul, the Balang methodology is Gabimbembe to see if it's jumping out, and hence if it's going to be successful as a work. Mimi. So you'll notice there in the exhibition a forest or a constellation of Mimi spirits, and these are very, very special for many top enders, for many people from Arnhem Land, and specifically in this case for Mawurndjul. And he's been making these across his career, a long career. And the diversity of the representations here, I think, is a wonderful, through the one kind of theme, if you like. It gives you a real sense of the diversity of those representations and the technical explorations. Mimi are mischievous figures. They're not benign and they're not malevolent in some ways. I mean, they can kind of get up to all sorts of trouble, but they're important figures, and they're made, or they represent these these elongated forms, because it's understood that they disguise themselves, hide themselves between the cracks of that stone country, so that they can slip in and out of that stone country and surprise you at any particular time.
And the Lorcan, they're incredibly important hollow logs, ceremonial poles used during ceremony. And one of the sites that we went to was Mumega, and that was where Balang's family, as a child, where he lived. And that is actually the site for the ceremony for the Lorcan, for his family. And they're hollow logs that have been hollowed out by the termites and collected, and then they're sanded back and painted. Each of the Lorcan have a title, whether it's a Kunrid that they represent or another story. They're all titled according to what it is that Balang is sharing with us.
You could argue that all of Balang's work is a collaboration with nature, because as Nici's described, nature provides the palette and of course the canvas. And in this instance, the form itself, because it's the inner bark or the inner substance of the Eucalyptus tetradonta that is delicious to termites. So the Eucalyptus tetradonta, these are the same trees that the bark itself comes from. These are placed in the environment, they're hollowed out and then painted up. And traditionally, of course, they form the purpose of ossuaries. They are part of a secondary mortuary ceremony, so in which after the body is cremated, human remains are placed inside these hollow log coffins, as they're also known, and the coffin is placed in the environment, very importantly on the site that relates to the deceased, and is returned to that environment. The deceased is returned to that environment. This tradition, it carries different names. In the northeast, they're known as Ladakich, centre and west as Lorcan, but this tradition is a really important part of returning one to country for people across Arnhem Land. So an important part of the process was thinking about interpretation. We wanted to do so much with the exhibition, and we wanted to bring Gunungu language to the forefront. The exhibition catalogue itself, actually, you'll notice, and in the exhibition physically, that Gunungu is first. We didn't want Balang's language, this important Aboriginal language, to be seen as being translated from the English, as though the English has some kind of primary or significant status as a first language. That's far from the case. So we wanted to put these lived ancient languages at the forefront of the thinking. So when you read the catalogue, you'll see Gunungu. Now, the Gunungu is one of the many languages that's used in central Arnhem Land. In fact, the diversity of languages in Arnhem Land is phenomenal. Murray Gard explained to us that around Maningrida, the number of languages that are used makes Maningrida the most linguistically diverse place in the world, that there are more languages in the small area there than there are anywhere else fluidly spoken. So we were acknowledging that there wouldn't perhaps be so many Gurungal speakers visiting the exhibition at Bunjil Place, but the important role that signalling first language performs was really an inherent part of the exhibition process. That meant that we sat down with Balang. Not only did Balang work and lead the process of selecting which works would form the exhibition, but his voice and the voice of family members is on the website so that you can learn from the master, if you like, so that you can pick up, start to hear, get your ear in. As Murray Gard also says, monolingualism can be cured. Australia is an interesting place because we're so culturally diverse and yet relatively monolingual. So this exhibition was a way of challenging that, and for people to hear Aboriginal language and to start to also put it in their mouths and to think about how this language is absolutely crucial to understanding, to an ontology, to a way of being. So John Mawurndjul, I Am the Old and the New, the website itself performed that particular purpose. Worth mentioning that the exhibition title, I Am the Old and the New, it touches on what I mentioned before about the idea of innovation and tradition being one and the same. Balang is the first to tell us that he is both the ancient and the contemporary at once. But that very expression came from Balang. So that was something he said to us. And it was one of those curatorial epiphanies where you go, we've got our exhibition title, off we go. Curators tell us that it's hard to find a title. That was one of the easiest titles we've ever come to, I think. And it really started to form itself through the agency of the artist.
Absolutely.
So some exciting things happened. We like to think about it as the ripple effect, because when you start to work with a community or one family in a community, you meet other members of the community. And an incredible supporter of the Bapra Women's Centre is John Mawurndjul. So Balang said to us, this is an important place in Marawonga. There are women from lots of different cultural groups working here in this Women's Centre. Go and check it out. See what you think. It's a really important place to support. So here we have some of the artists from Bapra. And since we started working on the exhibition, I don't think it would be an overstatement to say that Bapra have taken on the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Bapra itself relates to an important women's site, and women work in all sorts of different materials, but most famously now, and I think in a way that's really defined them in this process of working with textiles. So with using screen prints, as you can see here, but also block prints in the form of kind of lino cuts that are printed onto fabric. And this was about a way of creating a cultural and financial economy for the artists living on country, but also of getting those designs out there, how to communicate. This is getting it out there, isn't it? Here are some of the Bapra artists wearing clothes made from the incredible fabric that they have printed. And of course, they're in Paris.
And this was an exhibition, Yarakara, which is a name for one of the winds that blows through the area in central Arnhem Land. And the exhibition was held at the Australian Embassy in Paris last year and into early this year. So the artists went across and had a terrific time and spent time with some fashion designers. We actually were lucky enough to see the exhibition as well, because we were over there doing some work for the Curatorial project.
Which is on now.
Yeah, which is on now in
France.
In Brittany. So we just thought it was important because Balang is really about the whole community. He likes to support all of the women and to make sure that, you know, that what they're doing is recognised as important, and that, you know, that we're all in this together, and that we're really, it's about listening to each other and being able to share our stories with as many people as we possibly can, because of course the art centres within community, so Bapra is its own organisation. They have the textile studio. They also have an op shop that helps support the women, and also they have a shop where you can buy the fabrics from. There's the Jomi Museum, and then there's Marawonga Art and Culture, which has the studio space as well as the shop front and gallery. So really important places within community for people to be able to have something to work towards. Quite often they're the only income source for people in the community is through the Arts Centre, and they support, you know, many people in the community. So by supporting the Arts Centres directly through either purchasing works of art or working with them to develop exhibitions is really, you know, the way forward for all of us if we can help to do that. Yeah.
And some of just looking at these incredible designs, Mulmega is one of the places referenced in the exhibition, and the Mulmega bloom, the Mulmega water lily, is a really important bloom, an important flower, an important emblem, and that's used and referenced time and time again for the team from Bapara. A lot of the women working at Bapara also make work that is shown in part of the kind of Marawonga arts and culture and has been shown nationally and internationally. There's an Adelaide only kind of aspect to this, I suppose, because at the MCA, the wonderful thing about an exhibition travelling is that it shapeshifts. And when the show opened at the MCA, it was this fabulous celebration with John at the heart of the exhibition that looked at the idea of the writing of the writing of John Mawurndjul as part of an Australian art history. When the exhibition came later in the year to Adelaide, we have a space that's a designated space for children and families and really for intergenerational art making. So we invited the team from Bapara to create that space with us. So that was a space where you could come in and see those designs and make art inspired by those designs. We talk a bit about the ripple effect. I've said it a couple of times already today. We did have a band called the Ripple Effect who are also from Marawonga at the opening event of the exhibition at the Art Gallery of South Australia. So the team from the MCA, including Kat, Kat Sawyer, have been lucky enough to see the exhibition in its many iterations. And now you can all experience the exhibition John Mawurndjul, I Am the Old and I Am the New, I Am the Old and the New at Bunjil Place. And we're really thrilled that it's there.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Nici. I love that thought about ripple effect, and for us, this is a really exciting time to be presenting John's work and to be thinking about perhaps what future projects might evolve from this particular one. We have a couple of questions for you, if that's okay. One of which, obviously the conversation around John and his role within the community is obviously so important, but really interested in hearing about his formative years and how he came to art making, and particularly the incredible skill that he has built over the years. But where did he, or who encouraged that aspect of his?
So he worked really closely alongside his brother, Jimmy Numa, is one of the
father-in-law.
Yeah, and his father-in-law. So Kay Lunjawanga's father, Peter Marawonga, was another great influence for Balang, for John Mawurndjul. And he started out like a lot of artists who are painting on bark by painting smaller works. And it was really, it was a slow, progressive thing where he just started to get more and more ambitious.
He could see the potential of the work, and the development of Marawonga arts and culture was kind of concurrent with his professional development. Sometimes that's a really critical factor, how the Arts Centre is developing as an ecology alongside the individuals, and how the individuals and various Arts Centre managers, Apolline Cohen, Fiona Salmon and others, really played a critical role in pushing and developing Balang, who has this incredible ambition to really make new work and to try new things. Balang's also travelled a lot. So he travelled with Nici to Germany, actually, to Berlin. But he's seen a lot of art, and I think he's really interested in what other people are up to, the kind of work that people are making and the kind of impact that their work is making. Nici's point about Peter Marawonga and Jimmy Numa is really relevant, because we think about white Australian dynasties of art making all the time. The Boyd family, for instance, springs to mind. I think it's high time that we understood that there are absolutely important Aboriginal lineages, and we see it We've got an exhibition on here at the Art Gallery of South Australia called Converging Currents at the moment that looks across the whole of Arnhem Land. There's a focus on Yolngu genealogy, on Yolngu families. But in the case of John Mawurndjul, he's part of this incredible lineage, incredible dynasty of artists that goes all the way back to really important artists who were starting to test the sphere of reception for Aboriginal art. So I think to kind of reframe is a really critical opportunity here, and to think about how the artist draws upon previous influences, pushing them forward through their experience in seeing other work is a critical factor.
Incredible. One thing that I've observed through the talk is that you've interchanged referring to the artist as both Balang as well as John. Could you tell us a little bit about the reason for this?
Yeah, it's a funny thing, isn't it? We don't always do it probably deliberately. It's out of a sign of respect, but maybe familiarity a little bit as well. Mm-hmm. So it's a term that's used between family members, and it relates back to kinship. So it's a term that's understood as part of kinship structures, and it's a term of preference really for Balang. So yeah, that's my sense of it. Nici, yours too?
Yeah, mine too. And I think it is familiarity that we, through spending so much time with him, it was what, as you say, he preferred
that name.
Yeah. Because of course John is a given name. That's not his skin name. It's not the name that he was given as a child, but he is part of the Balang subsection of his family.
Wonderful. Thank you. And obviously what an incredible experience for you both to have built such a trusted relationship with Balang over the years. Really curious to hear what his thoughts and feelings are about the exhibition and how it's been received, and the fact that he's travelling nationally.
He's so proud of this exhibition. Mm-hmm. He is just absolutely, the thing for him is about the next generations, and for him to have been able to bring them along on this journey, for them to be able to witness and to be part of how he was received in Sydney and the people who came. And so for his granddaughter, grandson and son to be there was, you could see the pride, it was just incredible just for us to witness that and to get that sense of how important these particular showings of works are, and to think that this is, that it's incredible that this work spanned over more than 40 years of his career, and to bring it all together in the one place, and to have people from all over the world who travelled for the opening was really something else. And, we know the amount of work that he put into enabling us to be able to present this. That's the thing. He is very proud of that work that he's done, and in guiding us to be able to deliver this in the way that he really wanted it to be presented. So I feel that, he's very happy, and also that we have the website as a legacy.
Yeah, that's true.
That there's the glossary, there's all of this information extended, wall texts and information given over, about all the different maps and all the different Kunrad. So it's a terrific resource, for everyone, from school students right through to anybody who's interested in learning about John Mawurndjul Balang.
And we just want to thank the MCA, Natasha Bullock, who's now actually at the NGA. She was really key in driving her kind of commitment to doing the exhibition. Natasha did a project with Jonathan Jones and with the John Mawurndjul works in the exhibition probably 2 or 3 years prior to the exhibition being opened. And Balang came to that, and we had a chance to chat with him about the idea of doing the show.
That's right.
So these things, it's great to be reminded of just how long these things take to do properly, and just, that looking at the work, sitting down together, talking about what's appropriate, planning the trips to country, Skype conversations, mobilising the strength of the team. MCA has an amazing digital team who did, Jean-Pierre Chabrol did some incredible work constructing with the digital team there, constructing the interface for the show. I think it's just about what's possible through collaboration, that we could bring our particular strengths or particular kind of interests to the table. And now the show is with you. So it's already had a long life. It had a long life before it happened. But that was about honouring the long life of this incredible artist who's still making work and has been making work for decades and decades. And just a chance to stop and have a look at what a life's work kind of looks like, that's come from a place that might be very, very new for many Australians.
We are just so honoured to have the opportunity to present this exhibition to our community, and we are sure that it will be an incredible experience for anybody that steps through the doors. It's such a seminal exhibition, and the way that the curatorial team have brought it together, congratulations to you and to your colleagues, because I think it really will set the benchmark in going forward about what contemporary exhibition making looks like. I would definitely encourage all of our audiences to go and visit the exhibition website. It's a really astonishing resource, and the exhibition catalogue as well is an incredible compilation of essays and images of the artist's work, and really something special to enjoy. I'd certainly encourage everybody to go and visit the Bunjil Place website to be able to find out about opening times and how to book a free ticket to come and visit the exhibition, because it really is an incredibly special experience. Lisa and to Nici, thank you so much for your generosity today in sharing how this exhibition has come together. What a privilege it has been to hear from you both, and yeah, what an incredibly special project. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Georgia.
Thanks, Georgia.